Hey guys, Gaia's here. I'm back again with coverage on Gaia Gear, Part 8, guys. We are officially well into the second half of the story. In the last two episodes, we witnessed the first opening battle between the Metatron forces and the Manhunters. Avarachi piloted completed Gaia Gear Alpha into battle, leading the charge against their fleet. The heroes fought against an onslaught of dozens of man-machines in their attempt to sink Dargo's capital ship. All the while, Messer and Ray tried to sneak away and steal a couple of man-machines to make a quick buck, but were soon caught up in the battle and were forced to fight. We got to see Joe's upgraded Dochadi, the DH-3B, Kellen flew in the Zoran Soul, and we got to see them all participate in this massive battle between the two fleets, the Mother Metatron and its allied carriers, versus the Manhunters' Geijisu capital ship. Over 100 man-machines were deployed in this battle, but even when the heroes managed to break through their lines, the heroes failed to stop Dargo's ship from entering the atmosphere. Avarachi, in this battle, re-encountered Urian, who had survived their last meeting, it seems. The two fight their way through the burning atmosphere, with Urian taunting and mocking him as he tries to roast him with his bare hands. But luckily, Avarachi managed to escape, and he's managed to make it back down to Earth with his allies, the ship's landing just over the southern tip of France. With our heroes reuniting, we end episode 14 and begin the next stage of the conflict, with episode 15. All images and characters are owned by the respective companies and creators. We cut down to the surface. On a highway road, a girl pokes her head through the sunroof of a car and feels the breeze rush past her as the seasonal winds of Mistral rush through her. This girl, to our surprise, is actually Everly. It seems she's traveling by car on a trip through Europe along with an older man, whose name is Jack Bloom. The two approach a checkpoint, and the two are stopped by a Manhunter soldier. Jack Bloom is quick to react, as Everly is quite panicked. They weren't expecting this road to be heavily guarded. As the soldier orders them out of the vehicle, we cut over to Dargo. It seems the officers at the checkpoint relayed the incident at the gate to him. Dargo is taken aback by the mention of the name. The soldier hands him the ID that they confiscated from him, and Marissa worriedly asks if this is indeed the same Jack Bloom that the two of them are thinking of. Dargo asks how old the man was, and the officer said that he still looked young, but his ID strangely says he's 75. Dargo takes a second to think and eventually smirks. Interesting. He asks where he is now, and the officer says that they've been captured at a campsite, and Dargo then says that he's going to see for himself. Marissa says it's too dangerous to leave the ship uncommanded, but Dargo reassures her that he won't be long. They've made it to Earth, and it won't harm anyone if he spent a second to feel solid ground for once. We then cut to a short while later, and the captain has arrived at the site. The Manhunter soldiers have the older man in a tent, and Jack is quick to eagerly express his happiness that the captain came all this way to visit him in person. Dargo wonders how he knows who he is, and Jack is quick to point out, as if he didn't know the up-and-coming leader of the Manhunter agency. Dargo is amazed to see that the man is still alive, and the man chuckles. He didn't know he had a funeral. It seems the world has thought of him being dead all this time, and he just never knew it. He politely asks Dargo to take a seat, and the captain happily obliges. As Dargo sits down, he's amazed as he finds it incredible that the man has remained in secret this whole time while never using a fake identity. The old man says that there's no need for it. He's retired after all. Dargo is intrigued. He asks if the man has quit fighting against the Federation, and the old man says yes, and Dargo is quick to point out that it's strange to hear that from such a legendary Metatron activist like Jack Bloom. The Federation poured a lot of resources into trying to hunt this man down over the years, and they never managed to catch him, and now he has retired after this? The old man says yes, he's done running, and that he's done living a life filled with such bloodshed, that there comes a time for people to lower their fists and step down. The captain is amazed that he's hearing this from him, but the old man cuts him off. He wonders what Dargo's plans are for the Earth now that he's here. Dargo then says that he is here for the Earth Reverse immigration plan, and this leaves Jack confused. He's never heard of it before. He asks what it is, and Dargo once again explains it, that the chosen elite of space will return to the planet to begin making the preparations for humanity's return to the Earth, and that this plan has already been approved by the Federation government. Jack laughs at the idea, as if humans can set aside their efforts and restore the planet together. He says it's rather best to just leave Earth alone, but Dargo smirks, saying that that is a very Metatron way of thinking. The old man then says that he finds it odd that Dargo is planning to clean up the Earth, but instead of cleaning it, he's brought battleships, soldiers, and man-machines down to it, when clearly such an act wouldn't need this much security. He then asks if Dargo is planning on starting a war of all things. Dargo then says that Metatron might try to hinder his plans, and that they attacked their fleet upon entry to Earth's atmosphere. Jack is impressed by this. He didn't know Metatron still had some fight in them. He then asks if they followed him down here, but Dargo is quick to ask if this piqued his interest, but the man says no, he's just rather curious about it all. Dargo says that this intel is secret, and Jack says it's fine, he's retired after all, he can keep his secrets. It is here that Dargo then asks about the young lady he was with when he came here. Jack says that it's none of his concern, and the girl who's with him is his quote-unquote wife, saying this in hopes of throwing off Dargo's attention away from Everly. But the man says that he knew that's what the captain would think, him saying she's too young. He then spouts some nonsense about true love, and this makes Dargo laugh, as he's heard some strange stories about Jack's personal life, and that this is definitely what he expected from the legendary man that is the great Jack Bloom. Jack laughs and says the two of them are in the middle of their honeymoon, and that the two of them are on their way to Nouveau Paris. He then tells the captain that she doesn't know anything about Metatron and asks that he keep that part a secret from her. Dargo says that he's fine with it, but someone comes into the tent and tells him that that won't be necessary. Dargo turns around and it seems Urian has come into the tent. He says that the woman Jack has with him is Avaranchi Shar's lover. Jack Bloom says that the young man can't be trusted, but Dargo then realizes he's been lied to this whole time. The scene ends with him turning his head in anger towards the old man, angered that he let this man trick him. Over on the ground, we cut to another campsite with the Metatron forces in France. Avaranchi has received a message from their base, and it seems that the other carriers have landed, smoothly and discreetly, with this campsite being set up in the ruins of an old factory complex. From the message, it seems the Mother Metatron was attacked by the Federation forces and is currently stuck in battle with the enemy. That due to this attack, their second landing operation of man-machines will be postponed, and that they've received a message from the ship wishing them luck in battle. Madra is baffled. The reinforcements aren't coming? He remembers clearly telling them just how much trouble they're in while being stuck down here. Avaranchi says that it can't be helped. The Mother Metatron hasn't been at full strength ever since the Hellas raid. The captain freaks out, but Avaranchi says that they're gonna have to continue their fight against the enemy by themselves, and that they'll have to just hold out until their ground forces can link up with the landing party. With nothing else to do, Madra says that they'll be okay for the time being. The manhunters won't be attacking much in the coming weather. He then orders the communication officer to burn the reports. They don't need them now. As Avaranchi and the captain stand near the fire, Avaranchi can't help but feels sad. He's come all his way to Earth, but he nonetheless feels that this isn't encouraging at all. He asks why this is, and the captain says that now he's been made their leader, he has a lot of burdens to bear with that role. Avaranchi asks what he means, and the captain says that he now possesses Shar's memories, as well as his role as leader of this movement, the people he's met, and all the experiences and challenges that he himself has faced since coming here. It's all starting to weigh heavily on him, and he just doesn't realize it. The captain then says if he lets himself succumb to his fears, he won't be able to move forward in the end. Avaranchi then says that he's felt conceited, that ever since he learned he was a new type, he hasn't been able to listen to the opinions of other people, like with how Parrish said that they should wait for them to launch an attack, that he didn't even feel confident he could defeat someone as giant as Dargo, and that maybe in the end he just wanted to go home and forced all of them to come along with him. But the captain says to stop. When he came to space, he awakened something within him that was thought to be lost, and that he needs to trust himself more. He's a new type after all. Avaranchi then asks the captain what exactly truly is a new type. The captain says that they're evolved humans, formed from space that can sense the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of others, that have powers that can be unlocked, and ones that allow the user to gain a better understanding of themselves, others, and humanity as a whole. That it's not quite as psychic as something like telepathy, but regardless has the power to change things. Avaranchi asks if human beings really need such a power. Madra says that Avaranchi must have felt such a change when he came into space. That space is vast, and that in order to evolve to better survive it, humanity must be willing to change, and that they need such a power to endure such a vast environment without communication, that without it, humanity will remain distant and isolated, unable to grow or change their ways. Avaranchi now gets it, but he's also sad about it. It's unfortunate that this is his fate. Madra says that being a new type has its own limits, that they make great pilots and that they can use their senses to survive getting hit from any distance or direction, but that this is what their discovery has led them to, them being sent out into the battlefield to die, to fight in wars that lead to destruction, death, and suffering. Avarachi then says that piloting a man-machine seems to be the only thing he's good at, that he doesn't feel like his existence really qualifies as a legitimate reason to be a new type himself. Madra then stops him. He tells him that he's way more special than he realizes, his words being, "You're actually a forerunner when it comes to being a new type, that there's no question that he isn't one. His sheer existence will lead to the next stage for new types, not just with what he's seen now. There will be more, far many more of them with time. His actions have no doubt triggered this, and that he's their best and only hope right now." Avarachi thanks the captain, but just as the scene ends, Avarachi says he can't hear it. Ever since he returned to Earth, he hasn't heard Char's voice since, and this begins to make him worry. Back at the campsite, Krishna awakens as she's heard a strange voice calling to her in a dream. She sits down with Joe and the others over by the big fire, watching the stars. Seems the owls are out hooting tonight. Kellen makes a joke about trying to eat one, as they still don't have enough food left for the rest of them. They're all starving, and the rest of the crew had already picked clean the rest of their rations. Michael tries to complain about it, but Joe tells him to be quiet and just eat the bread that he's been given. Krishna then looks over and can see Avarachi and the captain talking by the tents. She wonders if he's doing okay. He's been pretty sad since they failed the mission. Kellen then says that he's allowed to feel as bad as he wants. Seems the red comet has fallen to Earth. Krishna tells him not to say something like that, but Joe cuts in and says that he's learned that Avarachi has inherited the memories of Char. Kellen asks what that has to do with it, and Joe says that it seemed to be a big deal with the higher-ups amongst the Mother Metatron's crew. Krishna then asks what the big difference is. Does being a memory clone not qualify you as being related to Char? And Joe says yes. If everyone had those memories, they'd all end up being Char Aznavals in the end. He wonders what it must even feel like to have someone else's voice inside your head. It mustn't be easy for Avarachi to bear. Krishna then says that it's the very reason they need to be there for him, that Avarachi needs them right now for their support. Joe agrees, and Kellen says that didn't mean for Krishna to misunderstand him, but that he himself doesn't hate Avarachi, but the guy really needs to reflect on his actions as of late, or else he's gonna end up getting killed making the same mistakes as before. Krishna agrees and reassures all of them that Avarachi understands that he knows how they feel, that he's just not in the best mood himself since he failed. Krishna then turns the group's attention to the others, to Messer and Ray. It seems they didn't have the best time in the battle, and they ended up crash landing in another area far from here. Kellen says that they're probably fine. You probably can't even put a stop to those two, even if you tried to kill them. Krishna agrees, and we cut to the two of them at their own smaller site on the other side of the mountain range. It's dark, and the two have been separated from the main forces, as the two of them are still navigating the forest. As Messer looks up, he can see a lightning flash above. He freaks out, thinking they're under attack, but Ray just tells him it's the storm. When Messer asks what that is, Ray tells him that she saw one on TV back in the colonies. Messer is amazed, as this is the first time Messer has come down here and seen one in person. The thunder is ear-splitting. He laughs as he can't believe it managed to scare him at first. He then comes down from the Dochadi's cockpit, saying that he can't believe they managed to get away from the other Metatron guys. The Minovsky particles are too dense to get a signal, and Messer doubts that they're going to be looking for them anytime soon. The two are alone in the mountains, and he doubts there's anyone living here for miles, and they'll just get moving once the sun comes up. He looks over, and Ray seems to be eagerly trying to fix her Dochadi's legs. Seems they took a bad fall when they landed. Ray says she's not sure if she can fix it, but Messer asks her to take a break. The thing's not going anywhere for the time being, and he can give her a ride in his suit for the time being if they need to. They can always come back for it later. Ray then asks if he still plans on selling the Dochadis to the feds. Messer says yes, and Ray tells him to go right on ahead, but she's staying here. She's gonna fix this thing and head back to Metatron herself. They can't afford to lose another Dochadi now that they've failed their mission. Messer is confused, as she sounds like she's talking nonsense. But Ray says no. She's done hanging around with him. She's done with his games, and he can go ahead and join whatever faction he wants. Messer gets confused, but Ray says what she's starting to feel. She feels useless. that she was confused about the world and hated it, that she liked having fun causing chaos in the colonies, but because of that, she feels as though it was the only thing she was good at. But it seems Metatron has changed her. It taught her things. It gave her a job to do, a purpose, and now she's made it all the way down to Earth. It's an accomplishment, and she wants to continue to succeed. Messer gets mad, asking why she's become so loyal to them, but Ray says that Metatron did something for him too. It showed her that he's just a clueless punk in the end. Ray then says that she can tell that Messer has been purposefully putting himself down, just so that he can remain the same as he always was originally. But Ray can see it. She knows how he works. She's known how Messer is, and the way he's been acting since they joined has gone against the kind of values that Messer once believed in. She then says she now knows why he's doing this. He's scared. He's scared of just how good of a person he can actually become, that he never takes others into consideration when it comes to his choices, especially those who are trying to fix things. That now that she's met Afaranshi, she now knows what kind of person she'd like him to be, someone who's not just content with running a gang or committing crimes for foolish reasons, that he should be a leader, a real leader. Messer frustratedly says that she's sounding like Krishna, but the girl says that he's just overwhelmed by someone who's better than him. He and Afaranshi are both men, and that he needs to start acting like one. That his behavior is the very reason Krishna doesn't like him. She then says that Krishna loves Afaranshi, but in reality, there's no one who loves Messer in the end. Messer then yells out, asking just who she thinks Messer is, and Ray's answer is blunt. He's a punk, and he's always gonna be one. Just as Ray storms off, the two witness something crash down in the forest. It leaves behind a trail of mountain rubble as it crashes through the forest. A man machine. The two race towards Messer's Dochadi and jump into the cockpit, as it's the only one that still runs. We then cut over to Afaranshi and the captain, who've learned from their communications officer that they've lost the signal to the Dochadis on the edge of the perimeter. Afaranshi then orders the evacuation. The manhunters have found them, and they need to move before the enemy destroys their encampment. Afaranshi heads out in the Gaia Gear, hoping to make it in time to save Messer and Ray before it's too late. He tells the captain that he's going to try not to worry about what happened. He has a new mission right now. He's going to help his friends. The captain wishes him luck, and the Gaia Gear takes off, with Joe and Kellen ready in the DH-3B and Zornsoul, launching into battle with the Manhunters attacking the mountains beyond. The three suits launching into the air to face the Manhunters, and bringing the episode to an end. Alrighty, episode 15, guys. Seasonal Wind over Mistral. What a title. Once again, no action, as once again, this is par for the course with Gaia Gear's pacing. One episode talking, another episode fighting. Now, this episode had a lot of stuff in it when it comes to characters. Firstly, let's do a little background on the new character we have, that being Jack Bloom. This old guy is special, and you may not realize it now, but he's probably the biggest character to appear in Gaia Gear. Now, we won't learn much of his origins at first, but Jack Bloom is actually a really neat character. He definitely fits the bill for being the old guy who's been sort of out of the fight for a while, but regardless is still good at what he does, and that is tricking people with his suave personality. He makes a very good spy, but also, later when he meets Afaranshi, he'll actually serve as a good guiding voice for him in these later episodes. This guy is very chill, and you get the impression right away that this guy has seen and done it all in his lifetime of fighting the Federation. And I mean, look how easily the guy made it into Dargo's head with his trickery. Now, we can really blame Urian for catching on to him, but the guy does a good job at showing us that Dargo isn't as impossible to beat as he comes off as. The guy fell for the man's lies the first time he met him. Like, come on, that's just pathetic. Now, I won't mention it now, as I will mention my theory about Jack Bloom in the next video, but I have a really good theory about Jack Bloom and who he might actually be. And it might be very surprising to everyone when they hear it. I'll tell you right now as a teaser, I don't actually believe this guy's real name is Jack Bloom. I think he's been using an alias his entire life, and that's just what people have always called him, not really knowing who he truly is. We have 10 more episodes left to go. I can't believe we're this close. This is really exciting. Now, I was going to make this its own video, and I might probably do that anyway, but I want to add this at the end. This was going to be another short theory video as part of my series on Gaia Gear, and I might make a smaller video going into detail about this, but this is a very interesting theory I have to share with you guys, one that I don't think many people know about, since those who don't know what Gaia Gear is have never known the greater connections this story shares with the UC timeline as a whole, and this theory addresses a question about some of the factions factions within Gaia Gear, as well as their origins. In the Gaia Gear radio drama, we have 3 distinct factions that play key roles in the story. The Federation, which at this point in the timeline has barely any authority over the Manhunters, and everyone for that matter, thus their inclusion only feels more like a formality. Since this is the Federation at its weakest point, and in a very short 15 years they're gonna collapse, see G-Savior for info on that. Now, if you haven't seen my very first essay on Gaia Gear, you actually will understand why this is the case. I mean, if the Manhunters are the ones completely in charge, you actually get the sense as to what is really going to happen next in the story. And just as a heads up, Dargo's plan doesn't just involve sending humanity back to Earth, but I'll hold that off until we get to that part in my actual series, as I have a lot of things to say about the Manhunters and the circumstances surrounding their creation and evolution, from where we first see them in Char's counterattack, all the way to their greater presence in Gundam Hathaway, to where we see them now. Consider that topic, though, as a part 3, as this theory and the theory I'll be going into in my next video will cover a whole bunch of stuff involving Metatron's origins, as it's in regards to a very specific character shown in the story, and their possible ties to that novel. As for the major thought I'd like to talk about right now, that being Metatron, you might ask the question of who exactly created Metatron as an organization, and I actually can offer an answer, and it's one that might surprise you. These guys are not an offshoot of Zeon. And wait, you might be quick to correct me, as there is a mention of Zeon in this story, in the form of Z-Zeon, but that's actually only mentioned in the novels, and it's just another name that the Metatron forces used to go by. It's kind of like a faction fake alias, like how Karaba is essentially the AUG's ground forces. I don't actually mean that they are, but you know what I mean when I say that. But if you're still wondering who created this overarching group, you actually can't do it by looking at Zeon. Rather, you have to look at MAFTY for your answer, but not particularly the faction, but rather the events that surrounded their conflict with the Manhunters. You see, if you're a hardcore Gundam fan and have read the original Hathaway's Flash novels, then the ending of those books actually gives us our answer as to how Metatron, in effect, was created. You see, in the original Hathaway's Flash novels, after Hathaway Noah is publicly executed, Kenneth Slegg and Gigi Andalucia travel to Japan to lament their regrets for letting him be killed. Kenneth, in particular, is ashamed that he was the one who was there to see Bright Noah witness his own son be killed by firing squad on live television. And actually, Kenneth ends up resigning from the Federation forces after this, after his efforts to catch MAFTY led to all this trauma-inducing tragedy. In the final moments of the story, he stands on the beaches of Japan with Gigi, and the two lament the tragic loss of Bright's son. At the end of their talk, Kenneth says something very, very important, that because of everything that has happened, he feels as though it's his responsibility to now finish the fight that Hathaway started. The very words he uses, maybe he himself will create a resistance movement to finally put an end to the Manhunters and the Federation. That resistance, he proclaims at the end, never makes a reappearance afterwards in the modern UC canon, at least for us here in the West. We're never shown what happened next to Kenneth. Now, with that proclamation, it makes total sense that Kenneth's state of guilt at the end of the books would sprout seeds of revolution, the revolution that would eventually become Metatron. I have no doubt that Kenneth Slegg and possibly even Gigi would be the original founding members of this group, with Kenneth founding a small organization in his time that would persist throughout the decades until the UC 200s and eventually become the force that would finally bring an end to the forces of the Manhunters, the very military force that Kenneth Slegg himself sent on the path to becoming tyrants through his vainglorious seeking actions. Now, you might ask, why is this group named Metatron? Well, Metatron, for those who are not versed, is actually the name of an angel found in Jewish and early Christian scripture, Old Testament texts and the like. The angel, known as Metatron, serves as a gatekeeper to heaven and is one of the angels responsible for judging and keeping record of souls on God's behalf. Now, if you know Kenneth Slegg, the guy loves mythology. He named his own Manhunter task force the Circe unit after all. And from a storytelling and character perspective, if he resigned from the Federation to create an organization to fight against them, it would make total sense from a character perspective that he would name this organization after a symbol for humility, that being an angel who judges souls at the gates of heaven and chronicles their deeds and keeps record of the souls who enter the kingdom of heaven, rather than what he normally does with things like the Circe unit, with a name that invokes the fiery, passionate tones of a Greek god or goddess, rather with Metatron being a name that speaks for Kenneth's own desire for penance after everything he did to catch and kill MAFTY, witnessing the young man have his father forced to watch as he's executed. And when you cut to Gaia Gear, 100 years later, the faction known as Metatron still exists even now. But you might ask yourself, what was Metatron originally comprised of? As Kenneth would probably have no allies when he quit the Federation. And that's where you're wrong. Because of Kenneth's influence, Metatron's creation would most certainly be led by people who followed him, people like Gigi and the like. But as well, if he was lucky, the possible remnants of MAFTY. This movement would grow slowly over time, starting as a simple activist group, the one in the books referred to as the Z Organization, but over time would come to comprise members of all walks of life from all over the Earth sphere. Once again, Metatron was created much earlier on. Their first recorded instance in the timeline was in the late UC 150s, just a few years after the Zanskar War, making Kenneth at this time an elderly man. But the work he would put into this would grow Metatron gradually to encompass all of these random elements. Most importantly, but not limited to, the descendants of Zeon, Crossbone Vanguard, the Jupiter Empire and its remnants, former Zanskar Empire officers, soldiers, and even just simple families who were fighting to uphold the memory of their ancestors, as well as carry on the fight for independence. This would explain the vast amount of manpower that Metatron has. These people all being both angered with the Federation for all the damage they've done to them, but also being able to look beyond their own personal histories to seek proper change through the cooperation and collaboration of each other's efforts. As we know, the colonists are already capable of doing this, but over time, as this movement grows, Kenneth would pass on, and the people who would come to replace his role as leader wouldn't be the exact same people as Kenneth's generation. This leads us to the current leaders of Metatron in Gaia Gear, with people like Admiral Parrish, his behavior just being the voice of the side that wants revolution, but also is too greedy to do it themselves, leading to Metatron's constant inactive and passive behavior, all of them just being too scared to try, as all their ancestors never won themselves either, in the end wanting to win, but not actually wanting to fight for it, as they just feel it's useless at this point. But that's where Metatron's greatest weapon comes in, that being Afferanci. He's literally their savior come to guide them in the end, so that they can actually achieve the dreams of those who came before, the dreams of those that Kenneth originally worked to destroy, now seeking penance and working to fix it all, with Afferanci being that result, a savior born from a fallen comet, reborn from its flesh, and clad in white. As you may have seen in my previous videos that I make the joke that Afferanci doesn't like the color red, but that's actually a true fact about his character. He's not a red comet. He wasn't made through the efforts of evil, like with what Zeon did to make Full Frontal. Rather, he was made from the DNA stores that Metatron acquired from the remnants of Zeon. Miranda didn't make him to be some kind of tyrannical dictator. Afferanci, just like Metatron, was made to rectify the mistakes of a leader. Metatron was made to rectify Kenneth's mistakes, and Afferanci was made to rectify Char's. It's very poetic, and I believe this theory to be true. It just makes narrative sense. Now, as for part 2 to this theory, you're gonna have to wait till next time when I show you the other thing I have to share that lends some more weight to this theory, as there is a character we have to still get to, a yet-to-be properly shown character that I need to talk about that also lends credence to this theory that Kenneth created Metatron, but that's for another time. Anyways, that's it for this video on Gaia Gear. Tune in next time where I go into the next episode of the story, episode 16. We're finally past the halfway point, and it's gonna be awesome seeing the story ramp up for its final conclusion, and it's gonna be a very spectacular finish. This is Gaia Gaius, signing off. Bye!